I'm going to start now. Okay, so more live on YouTube. Come on, technology gods, don't fail me now. Oh, that looks so good. Okay. Oh, preparing to live stream. That sounds promising. Okay, where has Peter gone again? Peter, you're still with me. There you are. Okay, good. I got one more little clicky to do here. Nope, not that. All right. Well, guess that's good. We're live on YouTube anyways. So, and I'm pretty sure it's just about 5:30. It is 5:29, but because we are prompt professionals, we're starting 1 minute early. Okay. Welcome to 1,000 Ways. 1,000 Ways is a quest to discover the 1,000 ways that Rumi spoke of so many centuries ago. 1,000 Ways to Kiss the Earth. My guest today is the amazing, that's the word, Peter Imhof. Peter Imhof is the executive director of Family Center. I've seen him do comedy quite well, actually. I've seen him speak in public quite well. He's a Rotarian. He's like a major do-gooder. You know, I used to be a ne'er-do-well, but now with influence of people like Peter, I am becoming a do-gooder as well. Peter, welcome to 1,000 Ways.
Thank you, Al. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the invitation and this wonderful intro. Makes me blush here, if you can see it. That's awesome.
So, Peter, come tell us about the very important work it is that you and Family Center do. I'm a big fan of what you do. It's very, very important. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Family Center is an organization that's I've worked for now since 2012, for 8 years almost. And I have to say it's probably the place where it's easiest to find meaning, has been easiest for me to find meaning in my work. It's an organization that makes a difference in the lives of people every day. And that is fantastic to have the privilege of being a part of that. So what Family Center does is Family Center supports families, as the name suggests, and its mission is to empower children and families through programs, resources, and connections. That is actually technically its mission statement, but what it does is it helps families to look after themselves, to look after the next generation, and to support each other. And that is for families with young children in particular. That's a big focus of ours. But we also do a lot of work for and with parents of older children or teenagers or adults. And that is really the key piece to strengthen the families in our community here in Lethbridge.
Cool. Very cool. I have, and I've shared this with you before, but I might not have shared it with the 1,000 Ways audience, the 4 people who are watching us, Peter, so don't get too nervous about this.
Ooh.
But anyways, what I believe is this, that taking care of and making sure that kids have a good experience is super important for them to become adults who have the capacity to have good lives, to have good health, to be good employees, to be good spouses, to be good community members. They have to have, but it helps a lot. Let's put it, not they have to have, but it helps a lot if they have good experiences growing up, right? And the opposite of that, where things go if they have bad experiences, adverse childhood experiences, is that they have poor health, they die young, they are more likely to be addicted, they're more likely to be involved with crime and etc. So it's a huge difference. If we want a community that's safe and productive and people are helping people, that kind of thing, we need kids who have had a good childhood. Right, Peter?
Yes, absolutely, right. That's a really important lesson that we've learned through this adverse childhood experiences study that was originally conducted in the States with a large number of people. What is it, like 17,000 people where they crunched some big data set, and it was in the mid-90s. And what they found was that there's a very strong, very simple correlation between adverse childhood experiences or childhood trauma And so they identified 10 different things, and then that was replicated in different similar ways. And those are pretty severe things, like there's addiction in the family, there's a mental health problem in the family, there is child abuse or neglect. So these are pretty severe, but they correlate very, very strongly with life outcomes decades later. And that was, I think, that surprising, but at the end of the day, not so surprising, but surprising in just how strong the correlation is, finding of that study, that people who had challenges and a childhood that was challenging them as children died earlier, had more diabetes, but then also had mental health issues. The top correlation is actually for suicide, people killing themselves. It is addiction is another piece that is very strongly correlated. And then we have violence, engagement in violence, whether that's as a perpetrator or as a victim. So those are pretty severe things. That's the stuff we see as social problems in our society. That is the stuff we would like to have less of. And we understand through these adverse childhood experience research, and this has been replicated in many, many different places. It's very, very solid, very well documented. We understand that the experience in the early years has a lot to do with lifelong outcomes.
You bet. Yeah. So Peter, if this isn't too personal, did you have some ACEs in your childhood?
Yeah, absolutely, I did, and I'm not a high ACE person, but the other piece when they did that study, and it was a middle class, so not to just to be clear, who was part of that study. It was a middle class study. This wasn't a poverty-stricken population, and they had over half of the people in that study had at least one adverse childhood experience. So it is very, very common for children to have some sort of challenge in their lives.
Yeah, it was Vicky Hazelwood and Dr. Gibb, who you know with them both well. They invited me to a movie not that long ago, before COVID, about adverse childhood effects. And it was a really, really good movie, right? But before Dr. Gibb started the movie, she said, and it was very anonymous. You had a little clicker thing. Nobody had to put up their hand, right? But this is a group of people in the social services. I'm not really part of the social services, but involved in the community, that kind of thing. And the response of people who have had at least one adverse childhood experience, it was like 80% of us, right? It was a huge, huge number. And the ones that had like 6 or 7, there was a very significant number there too, right? Oh, wow. So it's like if you are an adult now who had adverse childhood experiences, you might say, oh, this correlation, this is scary stuff. I'm going to die. I've got all these problems. But really, a lot of it, if you're aware of it, you can certainly get the help to kind of navigate through that, right?
That's right, yeah. And that's another key piece, that it's not deterministic. Welcome to my cat here. It's not deterministic. It's not like, okay, there are 3 ACEs and that means I'm going to have cancer, or I'm going to be depressed. That's not how that works. But what it helps us to see, and what it helps us as service providers, is to identify those situations where putting our efforts makes the most sense. So in children that are exposed to adverse experiences, they are at the most risk. And so if we can identify them, and if we can support those families where those children live, then we can undo some of that damage, or mitigate some of that risk. And so you have, when you imagine, it's kind of like, it's often compared to a resiliency scale, where when you have negative experiences coming down on one side of the scale and then weighing it down there, what you can do is, you can, on the other hand of the scale, you can add positive, supporting, strengthening experiences. And so over time, you can bring that balance back, or you can tilt it in the balance you would like it to see. And so that is really the purpose of organizations like Family Center or the Early Years Coalition that Vicki Hazelwood has been a part of now for quite a while, to look for opportunities. How can we support children and the families where those children live, to really help finding positive experiences and positive supports. And so as service providers, we can offer professional supports. We can offer an early childhood educator who knows a lot about early childhood development and has a lot of parenting tricks up their sleeves. But it's also important to have natural supports. That's where a lot of the help often comes from. Right? It's from your neighbor, it's from grandma, it is maybe from siblings who can help out. So finding different ways to support a child, that is really where the magic lies. It's not just going to be one thing that makes a difference. There's going to be a safety net, and that net needs to be spun with a lot of thread.
Yeah, makes sense. And now, in a time where most of us are home a lot more, maybe have more time on our sides, maybe this is a time to mend that safety net a little bit, patch up some of the holes in it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there is that. One of the key things, and that's why we in the service provider community don't like this COVID isolation thing. One of the things that we cannot currently do is support people by getting together and having positive experiences together. That's where a lot of opportunity lies for parents to spend positive time with their kids, and for those kids to have a good time with their parents, and for one parent to connect with another parent, and to build those bonds. Like one of the best friends that I have here in town is somebody I know because their daughter went to the same day home, and 15 years later we are still very good friends, and that obviously helps me with my resilience when I'm down, or when I need when I need some help with any practical or not so practical thing in my life. I know I can talk to Rob because we've known each other for a long time. So building those natural networks, those natural supports, that's a big piece, and that's hard to do when you are tucked away in your living room. And especially when you think about Lethbridge particularly, it's a growing community. I arrived in Lethbridge in 2001. We were about 65,000 people back then. And so we've added 35,000 people. That's more than 50% in 19 years. That's a very quick growth rate. Where do those people come from? From other places. So people who live in Lethbridge and have children in Lethbridge don't necessarily always have those natural supports with them because they've moved to Lethbridge. Sure. So not everybody, myself included, my parents don't live here. They live across the Atlantic in Germany. So my brother, my parents, my siblings, the niece and nephew that I have, they cannot support me as a parent. And so that is a particular piece that is valuable to offer to families in Lethbridge, because so many people have moved here and don't necessarily have those natural supports already.
Yeah. Hey, just the video got a little choppy when you were talking about your friend Rob. So if I followed along, you both had children in the same home care or daycare facility. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And do you have a son or a daughter?
I have a son and a daughter.
Oh, a son and a daughter. And so one's like 17 or something like that, it sounds like.
That's right.
Okay, cool. And what's the other one? How old's the other one?
15 and 17 right now.
15 and 17. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Okay. So some books that I read recently, because now I'm like, oh, I got some time in my hand. I'm gonna try and use this as productively as I can, right? So in the last while, I read The Divided Mind by John Sarno. I read The Body Keeps the Score by, what's his name? He's awesome. What a great thing. Read some stuff by Gabor Mate.
Gabor Mate, yeah, that's it.
And there was one other one, but basically, I know what it was. The A Homecoming by John Bradshaw. But in all of these books, the central kind of theme is about your trauma that you've had, that you've experienced, that if you don't have a way to kind of release it, deal with it, process it, it's going to keep having negative things on your health, right?
Right.
When I first heard that thing from that concept from that divided mind, it kind of amazed me, but I can see it playing out so easily that a person has some kind of thing that they need to resolve that they don't want to because it's too big or scary or that kind of thing. And they get pain in their shoulder. And, you know, as my age, if they put an MRI on my shoulder, they're going to say, oh, there's wear there. Of course, it's wear. It's beat up, right? So then they'd say, oh, well, we'll do surgery on the shoulder. And then great. That relieves the pain, but I still haven't dealt with the cause where this is keeping in my body. So now it's my knee. Well, okay, we dick with the knee and, you know, that kind of thing. And anyways, it just, to me, that made so much sense that if you have to find a way to kind of address these. And I know part of my business life is being a big advocate for employee family assistance plans and counseling services, right? Like I am the first to say, I use these, you should use them too. There's no stigma associated with this whatsoever. Use it and address where here's are things that are concerns, here's are things that are problems, right?
Yep.
And then go from there. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's a really good point, and I'm just going to play off that for a minute. So one thing that we can do is, like, you know, you can add positive experiences to counterweigh the negative experiences. So you can tip the balance of those experiences for the child, and then that continues in adulthood, right? It's not like when you turn 18, a switch is flipped, right? So that continues, and, you know, having good medical care is obviously part of that. But the interesting piece is when you look at the balance and at that scale, at that resiliency scale, the point of where the fulcrum is, right? So when the fulcrum is in one direction and you have something drop on one side, if the fulcrum is way over there, then this is going to weigh very heavy. And if the fulcrum is more towards the other side, then yeah, the same experience is coming down. But because of where the fulcrum is, because the way leverage works, it's not going to weigh as much on that particular person for which this is a metaphor. So yes, when you have a problem with your shoulder, you see a medical doctor and, you know, they get it fixed. And then there's something with your foot, right? But what you can do with counseling is you can change the perception and understanding of what's going on. You know, you're a healthy individual, and you know, we're all getting older, so we could have something, but maybe there's something else going on, and maybe what you need to look at is finding a healthier lifestyle. Not that I'm saying you need a healthier lifestyle, but just hypothetically, right? Like, what else? What can I do? How can I build my own resiliency?
Yeah.
What can I do in order to look? What can I do to support myself in being healthy? And then you will start making good decisions about what you eat, how much you exercise, how much you sleep, how much you meditate, how much good time you spend with your family, and all that stuff, right? And when you start thinking about that, you can start pushing that fulcrum. So when something happens, you sit on a funny chair because now you're working from home and you don't have as good a task chair. Your body is stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And you will not get that twitch in your shoulder because your back muscles are stronger. So you've built up that resilience, but you've done that because you've reflected and you thought about what are the choices and how do I make healthy choices. And that is where external input, a counselor, a confidant, somebody who can really support you in that self-reflection, can make a huge difference, because moving this fulcrum is not terribly easy, especially as adults. We like to be in the places where we're at, and to be pushed out of those and learn new resilience skills is a trick. And it is a lot easier, A, if we're young, and B, if we have somebody outside of us who can support us in that process.
Yeah, one thing that really kind of drove that point home with the whole counselors is I talked to a counselor, and that he was talk to a male and a female counselor, and in both cases they went to a counselor, and I said, you go to a counselor. Okay, well that's interesting, right? So it's not, it's not so much that they have all the best ideas, it's that they're removed from your life and can better observe what you got happening, right? And then say, hey, wait a minute, I see this. Have you ever thought of that? Oh shit, yeah, that makes sense, right? So yeah.
Because it's the same thing for them, right? It's just as difficult for them to self-reflect. Maybe they have better tools and maybe they're better trained at that and they have more experience, but it's still very difficult. And it's, you never see what you don't see because you don't see it, right? That blind spot does
Exactly.
not go away.
No.
And to have somebody who can soundboard this with you, somebody who can help you self-reflect is huge.
Yeah, actually, one of the counselors I went to, her name's Dee. She's in Lethbridge here, and she had said that book, John Bradshaw, Homecoming. Have you ever read it before?
No, I haven't.
No. Anyways, I think it's a fairly old book, but it's just so well thought through. It really kind of has you look at each aspect of your life, like when you're a child, and when you're a toddler, and when you're a preteen and a teenager and adult, and take these little snippets of your life and kind of figure out what you were, whatever, unsure about, how you felt belittled in any way, or how, those kind of things, and then address that little child. As adult Alan, I'm talking to 7-year-old Alan, and I'm saying, hey buddy, you know what, this thing happened and it was bad, but it's not your fault. You did not cause this in any way. There was an adult who is unhealthy, and that's the cause of that, but that's not, you aren't at fault in any way, right? And I thought, okay, well that's a very interesting process to follow through, right? And you actually
Yeah.
write a letter to yourself, from big
Oh,
Alan to
interesting.
little Alan, or big Peter to little Peter. It was a pretty cool
Yeah.
book.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. And I thank you for making this really strong point about, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It just means you live a regular life and some bad stuff has happened to you and you need to think about it and you need to calibrate accordingly.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. This is the boat we're all sitting in. And for some of us, it's harder than for others. But there's nothing bad or shameful about it.
No.
And to really not worry about reaching out for help. That is really a key piece. And that is what we also see at Family Center. And that's one of the one of the nice pieces about Family Center. We work with young children and their families. We don't just work with the young children. It's always the family. There's always a caretaker with the young child.
Sure.
And so what it is, it's parent-child play groups. And this is where we create those connections. This is where we create connections within the family, across families, where we can talk about healthy child development. This is where we can share parenting tricks. But at the end of the day, why do parents come to this? Because they're having fun, because their kids are having fun, because they have an hour and a half where the kid is super engaged and they're having a really good time. And so it's very positive, it's strength-based. It is making sure that that positive experience, that we know what a positive experience looks like. We know how we can create it. And once we've seen it in action, we can also go back home and say, well, I've seen what the early childhood educators do at Family Center. I can also do this in my home.
Mm-hmm.
It's not rocket science. It's not that complicated. Little
Right.
children find engagement very easily. We just need to put we need to know what to put in front of them. And so it is really positive, strength-based, not, people don't go there because they have a problem. People go there because they want to have a good time with their kiddo. And that's a really good starting point. And it becomes a little more challenging then for people to say, okay, do you have a parenting class? Do you have a counselor? Is there something more that I can access? And that is why it's so important to say, yeah, sure, totally. We've got that available. Please come in and we can support you this way. There's nothing wrong with you for asking for help.
Definitely.
And that is still a challenge, especially for men,
Yeah.
where men are often thinking they have to be the strong, independent guys that can pull anything, and asking for help is sometimes a little harder.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding. that I think you taught me this, Peter, that basically a lot of the, like, let's say you're not the parent, but you're an adult who is concerned about that family or the welfare of a child, in that family. And if you're that adult, the interaction that makes a huge difference can be so small. Like it could be a short conversation. It could be a little hug. It could be a, way to go, Timmy, right? Like it's small things, a little serve and return playing hide and seek or whatever, right? Small things like that make a huge, huge difference in their lives, eh?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's the other piece that's really interesting. Like we all have a role to play in this. And what that means is that we all can have positive, supportive relationships with anybody in the community, and particularly with young children, where it really makes a big, big difference. And so, sure, the parents of a newborn have a huge hormonal advantage because they love their child, because they just went through childbirth. So they're all over the little ones. Of course, you also have, I should mention that there's also situations where it doesn't work like this, and we have postnatal depression. And that is a very difficult place to be. And that is also a biological thing that happens. I think it's 1 out of 7 births where that happens. So it's quite frequent, and it can be very challenging. But in the majority of cases, the hormones help the parents to just really connect with the children. And so that is a quick connection, but it's obviously not only the parents, it's the extended family, it's the siblings, it's the grandparents, it's the aunties, it's the uncles, and then it goes beyond that. Anybody, whether it's the neighbor or whether it's just a friend who comes over, they can have a positive interaction, and at the end of the day, supporting children is not hard. It is not rocket science. The human race has figured that out over thousands of generations going back into the past, right? We know how to go from generation to generation. We know how to raise our young ones. And so it is in us that we can provide that interaction, but making a deliberate point to allowing that and to reaching out to children and to families with children or youth, or simply families to support those families. That is often an extra step. And again, there are sort of cultural boundaries where it's often seen as women's work, or men are not seen as competent caregivers. And those are things that, yeah, let's, give it a whirl. Give it a whirl. Every man can change a diaper. It's not that hard. And every man can play peekaboo and fist bump kiddo. It's not that hard.
Now, Peter, you know Mandy DeCecco-Colobaba, right? Do you know her?
I have not met her in person.
Okay. Anyways, she was the president of our Rotary Club a couple of years ago. And during her term of being the president of her club, she had her baby, Jude. And so she would bring Jude to the meetings because she still chaired the meetings and worked and did all the things, because that's how women can do 18 things perfectly and men can maybe do one half-assed. But anyways, she did all these things. And so when she'd come to the meeting with Jude, I'd say, oh, I'll hold him, right? And I got the patented rock a baby motion thing, right? So he'd like that. Yes. And I'd sing to him while I'm holding him, eh? Oh, those were some of the most fun meetings I ever had. I'd just walk around carrying them and singing to them. And so, yeah, it was fantastic. I bet you there was a dozen meetings like that where I was Rotary dad. So yeah, it was great.
That is such an important thing to remember. It's such an important thing to remember. We like to think of ourselves as, how can I support others? I want to be a good person. I want to be a do-gooder, and think about, who needs help in this community, and I'll reach out and support that person. That's all fair and good, and there's nothing wrong with it. Let's do more of that. But what it does at the same time, and that is really important to appreciate, is as we help others, we are helping ourselves.
Yes.
It's always a reciprocal relationship.
Yes.
Yes, that little child that little child felt probably really confident and happy to be rocked and being against a warm body and feel your heartbeat and hear the sound, the song that you were singing. But you also felt really good about it, right?
Definitely. No
So
question.
when our relationships work, they work both ways. As a parent, I can support my child, but when I have a good moment with my child, I'm overwhelmed by joy. I love that moment, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I get something out of this as much as the person I'm hopefully supporting
You
is
know what
getting out
kids
of this.
really feel when you sing, hold them? They feel, I'm with you. It's a reciprocal thing. When they feel the vibration of your body, that's what really kind of settles them down. They feel that vibration. I don't think it doesn't matter how you sing, just the vibration is what they tune into. So, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it's the vibration and the body heat, and just having a physical contact. And that's, I just, today on Facebook, a friend of mine had their first baby, and first picture of dad with baby, and now in the hospital, or I don't know where that came from, but the picture of dad with the baby was dad leaning back and having the gown open, so
Yeah.
there was bare chest and the baby on the skin, right?
Yes.
When our kids came into this world here at the Lethbridge Hospital, that wasn't done yet.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
That wasn't a thing yet. So, but yeah, it's definitely, it's very immediate, very simple, very down to basics. Our physicality, right? Our heartbeat, our voice, our breathing, our body temperature.
Yes. Recently I have a little nephew, and I haven't seen him now for about 6 months or something. But anyways, when I last saw him, he had quite a bad fever, as kids often do, right? And so that's what I did. I took off my shirt and put him on my chest, and because my body, my huge, massive, normal body weight just kind of equalizes his little body, right? And his fever went down in a big hurry. I was telling my wife that I did that with my daughter, and she said, "You never did." So where did I learn it then? How did I come up with this? So yeah, but it worked. It was good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. But yeah, it's really important, those, and I mean those are very intimate and beautiful experiences. But it can also be really simple. It's just, often when you think about how many kids are involved in sports, and how much that structures their week, and how important it is to them to be a good soccer player or a good hockey player, um, and what that relationship does between coach and a young athlete,
Huge.
right?
Huge
That
influence.
that can already make a big difference. And obviously we're not talking about physical interaction at this point, but simply how we interact positively in a consistent, supportive manner with young children. How can we create environments where that happens? Sports clubs, right? And are there what other structures, what other community opportunities are there where we can consistently build positive interactions of adults or with young children? That's I think a key question for our community, and how can we facilitate these serve and return interactions?
Yeah, exactly. And the interventions, like maybe the logistics of getting the interventions together are maybe more difficult, but the actual interventions are relatively small, right? And I think it was a Facebook post, maybe you did it. It was about in Denmark, I believe. Denmark, if they have this was kind of their policy in the school. If they had where Jimmy hit Sally, well, they just like shut the class down. All right, let's have a discussion. Sally, like, how did this happen that, Timmy hit you, and Timmy, what's up, like, that kind of thing. And they have a conversation about it and like resolve it. And the curriculum doesn't matter what they're learning. A real important, probably one of the most important lessons right there. Okay, well, I was jealous because she talked or whatever, right? So then they have that conversation and kind of, all right, here's how we deal with this, as opposed to fisticuffs, right? So yeah.
Absolutely, that's a really good point. That's a very important skill, and it's not the same thing as learning how to skate or something. That's a very obvious skill. How to ride a car, drive a car, whatever. But when it comes to when it comes to how we function as individuals. These are also skills.
Yes.
Resilience is a skill. It's something that can learn. It's something that can be taught. It is something that can be developed. And that's just coming back to that for a second. That's why the early years are so precious,
Yes.
because our brains go berserk in those first years,
Yeah.
where there's so much learning, there's so many connections that are made every day. So learning happens so effortlessly and so quickly. It's a really critical opportunity for a variety of developmental areas,
Yeah.
whether that's physical, but then also the language, for example. We all know how hard it is as an adult to learn a foreign language. For a child, they pick up as many languages as you put in front of them,
Yeah.
and it's just fine, right? It takes no effort at all. And that is also where that navigating the social world comes in. So what is okay and what isn't? What is appropriate touching? What's inappropriate touching?
Sure.
What is an assertive communication, and what is being mean? What is kindness? How does inclusion work? Those things kids learn in very early years.
Yeah.
So exploring the social world. It's emotional self-regulation, which where we again come back to resilience. I failed my test. I don't know how to do this. I can't draw a butterfly. And that's, not good. I would like to do that, and it hits me. But how do I come back? How do I rebound from that? And how do I figure out how to do that? And when I can do that with a butterfly, that I can draw in grade 1, I can also do that then in grade 10 when somebody calls me a name. And I then can also do that more likely when I am 35 and I get laid off. And so it is a skill set that is in our brains, and we have one brain for all our lifetime that we carry through. So what we learn early, the brain architecture that we can put together in the early years, will be available to us throughout our lifetime. And that is where that connection comes to the adverse childhood experiences. If my experience as a child is the world is not safe, there's chaos, there's violence, I better keep to myself because people aren't safe. I don't want to be exposed to that risk. When I learn that, and my reward centers are trained that way, that social interaction is not a good thing, is a risky thing, is a dangerous thing, that when I have an ice cream cone, it is sweet, it is good every time, I can rely on that, I will start to look for those kinds of experiences. And whether that is then an ice cream cone, or whether that is smoking a joint, or taking some other drug, or just overeating on ice cream cones, as an adult, that kind of behavior can show through again.
Sure.
So it is how we train our brain in the early years that this brain will serve us as adults, unless we do some really hard work as adults, which is absolutely always possible.
Yeah.
It's never too late, but it's just a lot harder.
Right. But what parent, if you ask them the question, do you want your child to have a better life than you? Well, I shouldn't say all, but almost all parents are going to say, yes, of course. And so if they do those things, which are relatively small, or they get help to do them, right? I want to back up for just a moment. Remember, you're talking about new parents and hormones. I don't know if you know this, but it amazed me. I read this book, The Female Brain by Dr. Luann Brizendine, and it taught me more about women than I've ever known. And shouldn't be much of a surprise, because it's the first book I ever read about women that was written by a woman. So, I don't know how I didn't put that connection together earlier. But anyways, she says in the last third of a woman's pregnancy, a woman's brain actually shrinks, gets smaller. And then when she delivers that child, her brain kind of rewires into mommy brain and starts to grow again. And I'm just, really? That's incredible. I mean, all of the other physical things, and then this part with the brain too. incredible. So yeah.
It is incredible. And our brain is such a, and we humans are animals with brains, right? We are animals with big brains. At the end of the day, that's what we are. And our brain is phenomenal. And that is really an important message. Yes, during the early years, the brain is just going bonkers, like, because it's got to start from very little and it grows so quickly. And then the second phase where brain development is super rapid is puberty, is adolescence, where we have to really build up those higher level skills. We need to figure out how to, budget and how to plan our life forward, right? A 5-year-old doesn't do that. A 5-year-old knows that, anyways. But it doesn't mean that our brain development stops after that, right? So all the way through your lifespan until they put you 6 feet under, your brain is developing. And there's a lot of research actually here at the University of Lethbridge also about what happens with the senior stages in our lives, and how can we support our brain development when the brain wants to go the other way and it contracts and I'm not sure whether it's contract. I'm not sure I'm using the right language. That's not my level of expertise, but
Capacity
it
diminished.
continues.
Let's just call it that, right?
Yeah, it continues through the lifespan, and we can influence this. Depending on what kind of experiences we expose our brain to, we can support our brain to grow in healthy ways or not so healthy ways.
There's a book by Dr. Norman Doidge called The Brain That Changes Itself. Have you read it?
No.
No? Oh, it's amazing. But basically, it talks about neuroplasticity, right? And the development of neurons that are going all the time. And then about basically where, people who have lost whatever, the eyesight, the brain will find another way to get some kind of visual images. Well, just like the brain can say, oh, well, we weren't using that channel, we're going to use this channel now, right? It's just like bizarre magic type things, right? That your brain can actually do, right? If it's healthy. And you were talking before about, the things, the changes you make that make, your resilience, that increase your well-being or increase your health. And a lot of those have kind of a cumulative effect, right? You make this change and you're like 5% better, right? You're 5% closer to your ideal self. You make this change, well, you're a little bit closer again, right? That kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's that what really happens in the early years where these developmental windows are super critical. And sometimes in our common day language, we don't necessarily have the not always the right language to really appreciate that these are skills and that this is something we can learn. So in the literature, one of the key skills that little children are starting to develop is called executive functioning. That's something that Dr. Robin Gibb and other people at the university can speak very interestingly to. But it's a scientific concept. Like, my grandma never told me about executive functioning, right? That was not a thing. But it is about planning. It's about making decisions. It's about remembering pieces from the past that inform my decision today and how I can plan into the future. And it's often compared to air traffic control. So you've got all these things happening, and you need to sort out what is urgent, what is happening now. How do I avoid collisions? Which airplane is coming down next? Which airplane can still wait a little bit? And making those decisions all the time, that's a key piece. And that's a key learning. But unfortunately, we don't really have good language for that. Maybe we have negative language when that's missing, that kids are forgetful or flimsy or scatterbrained or don't think too hard, or I don't know. But that's been an interesting learning for me, working at Family Center, where I wasn't familiar with that concept at all.
Yeah.
Until I read about it.
And that's actually one thing too that is super important for young people not to be involved with drugs until age 25, right? Like, I mean, they might never want to be involved with drugs, but for sure before age 25, because that screws up the development of the executive function, right? Is what the way I understand it. So
Yeah, and the brain development is still so busy at the time that there can be much more severe damage. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That I think is something we've learned. And at the same time, it's, I want to come back to my grandma. Like, you know, a lot of this sounds like, there's brain development and we have a neuroscience department and we have the latest research right here in Lethbridge. And this is all amazing stuff. And what we've learned in the past 10, 20 years is just outstanding. And, this needs to continue. There's no doubt about that. But I think at the same time, I also want to refer back to the sheer history, the sheer experience of humans in raising the next generation. This is not new. We
No.
have raised healthy next generations for many generations, and it's not something that you need to go to school for to do that. You can have very strong intuition and just be a very good parent without ever having read a book about anything. And it is being a constant a solid support, having positive relationships, supportive relationships on an ongoing basis. If you can't deliver that, that's half the battle as a parent, and the rest is just sugar on the icing.
Yeah. Um, um, did you do that brain story certification course by chance?
Right. Yeah, I did.
You did? Okay. Do you
Yeah.
remember the part in that course when they were talking about historical First Nations types practices in terms of child raising, right? And then, there was a ceremonies, right? When the child turned 5, this was the ceremony to teach them whatever. When the child turned 8, here was the ceremony that, made this, right? And so on until they were a brave or whatever the next thing was, and then a warrior. And I'm termed with a warrior, that's not all aggressive, that's about protecting, right? Protecting your tribe, protecting your family, protecting your people, right? And so anyways, that part to me was fascinating because it kind of documented here's a path, and maybe not the only path, but a path to raise a good adult, right? Here's how you go the steps, right? And I don't know if those traditions or those practices endure. I mean, obviously they know enough about them to put them in the brain story course, but it's just like what a great tool, what a great method, what a great way to kind of make that and say, here's the ceremonies, here's what we're celebrating now, right? So
Yeah, really, really interesting point. And I think the First Nations really have a leg up on that because they are so focused on relationships, where relationships are super important in First Nations. I mean, at least that's what I'm hearing. I'm obviously not a First Nation individual myself, coming from Germany, but that's what I hear from my Indigenous friends, and where the relationships are so important. And when relationships are important, that is when you can have sustained supportive relationships. And then you will get those not only with mom and dad, but you get them with your extended family. And now you're talking about, a lot of people.
right.
And all of a sudden, the village raises the child.
Right.
And this is, when you look at Indigenous families, they often talk about aunties, they often talk about elders. So the relationships go, or cousins, they go far. And so all these relationships are available to support a family or a child, and that has a lot of value. And when you contrast that to a typical Western experience like my own, where I pack up, I moved to Canada a few thousand kilometers away from anybody I'm related to or even have made friends over the years. And now I'm building a life here. That's a whole other setup. If I fail to build positive relationships around me, I'm going to be at risk, because where am I going to get my resilience from?
Sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it relies on me to be able to pull that off.
Yeah.
But when you are staying within your community, that is obviously a huge protective factor.
Yeah. And you have to be very appreciative of those people in your life who are there that working together on common goals, right? Or supporting each other in doing something, right? Like I'm very blessed. I have so many great people in my life who want to make the same kind of difference as I want to make, right? And it's fascinating. It's very rewarding. So yeah. And when you're talking about this being relationships being an advantage for First Nation people, obviously they need all the advantage they can get, right? Like us as white people, like really, you know, what we did to First Nation people, like I did not believe it when people told me that. And about residential schools and about that whole practice, I said, no, you're confused. That couldn't have happened in Canada. But oh yeah, it happened in Canada for decades. So
Yeah.
wow.
Absolutely, right. And coming from Germany, and with German history being what it is, I'm acutely aware that that people can do horrible things to other people, and they will find ways in their minds to think that's okay,
Right.
and to think that is the way it's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And this is again, I think, a universal human risk that we run, and we always need to be vigilant about that. And we all have our biases. Nobody's excluded. I have my biases, and the best we can do is consider them and
Yeah.
see how we can work with that. It's talking about that sort of, you know, going back in history a little. There's a sort of an approach to early childhood education, just in the context of World War II and times that were very difficult in Europe. There's an approach in early childhood education that is today still taught and valued and identified as a strong practice. It's called Reggio Emilia. And Reggio Emilia is a town in northern Italy. And after World War II, when that part of the world didn't look so good, and it was ravaged by war and many people had died, this community came together and started to think about, how do we want to raise our children? And they formulated that, they articulated that. And that was before neuroscience and scanning our brains and all that stuff. And they came up with amazing stuff. The child is the leader. You learn from your environment. You use all your five senses, and a variety of things that still today inform our practice. So it's not that we just found this out last year how to do this.
Right.
This is knowledge that has been around for a long time. We just need to tap into it.
Sure, exactly. I mean, now even ACEs, right? That was, I think you said 1995, if I recall correctly. So 25 years ago. It's not like this is a big news flash. And apparently the gent from that movie that I saw, the gent who like discovered this, like just like wept. Look at what we're doing to ourselves, right? I mean, this is crazy, right? So especially that relation between ACEs and poor health, or ACEs and early death. I mean, you know, that's like, anyways, yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah.
Cool. So now at the Family Center in our COVID times, what kind of services are you still doing, or what kind of things are still happening there, Peter?
Oh, thanks for that question. COVID-19 threw us completely for a loop. Oh my, it's been incredible to see, and I'm so proud of all the people who are working at Family Center right now. It's really incredible. Like, we are people-based, right? We build relationships. That's what we do. We build relationships before we do anything further than that. Before we try to educate or reframe or ask questions, we're just want to connect first, and then we think about how can we support this person. And if we can't build relationships, if we can't invite people in, what do we do? What's our purpose? And it's really incredible to see how staff at Family Center have taken that on. Yes, our mission has remained. Families are stressed because they're at home all day, they're bored, structure has fallen away, they may be financially stressed. There's all sorts of reasons for families right now to be stressed because COVID may get them. The radio and the news is full of it. And so what can we do right now to support those families? So we have gone completely online. We have closed our doors, but we're still providing services. So we put things on Facebook, we have lots of YouTube videos, we have interactive Zoom sessions about mental health. We provide parent support one-on-one over the phone or over video conferencing. We have people on the phone ready to provide assistance when people say, hey, I need something. I have a problem. I need to, file my taxes, or I need to know where the shelter is, or I need to figure out how to support my elderly parents. We have somebody at Family Center on the phone who provides information and referrals to other services in the community. Those are trained people. And so we provide information and referral over the phone. We have early childhood education. We do phone check-ins with our existing clients. We do a lot of stuff online now. On Facebook is probably the best place. We have mental health sessions with Zoom. We do parent education support. And we run the community kitchen in collaboration with Interfaith Food Bank. And so we have put our kitchen programming online, and we've seen Umami in town that has done that very successfully. And so how can we support people where cooking is a challenge, and food access can be a challenge.
I hear there's actually going to be a sourdough bread expert on Saturday that's doing something.
That's my personal session that I'm really looking forward to. That's my own mental health strategy to stay sane.
When you said about doing taxes, I thought doing taxes, in the past, I would have thought, well, that's kind of like, how does this fix into the whole, services for families? But I was at a Shenla meeting that, what's it called again? Social Housing and Equity Network Lethbridge. That's what it is. A Shenla meeting. And they were talking about taxes. They have to have the taxes. A lot of families have to have taxes to get the provincial, like the government supports, right? Or if they're eligible for, different programs, they have to have their taxes filed or they can't be, right? And so a very simple little thing that, like, if I have access to a computer, I could do a simple tax return for somebody in 15 minutes, right? Okay, well, that's a big deal for that family, right?
Absolutely, right. And financial stressors are very significant.
Oh,
We can't ignore that, right? If the breadwinner in the family loses their job, that is stressful, not just for that person, but for that whole family.
yes.
And when there are already fissures and fractures in the family, that will only amplify those,
Yes.
and will make that more severe.
Yes.
And so that is right now actually one of the really challenging pieces around this COVID-19, is that a lot of child abuse is not necessarily being reported.
Yes.
Because there's less contact with individuals who would normally report this, for
Yes.
example, teachers.
Mhm.
And so there's there are fewer reported cases. And those situations stew and simmer at home,
Yeah.
and who knows what's going on. And when you have those added stressors, like loss of a job, loss of employment, or just the anxiety that I might lose my job, that doesn't make it better.
No.
And there's nobody there to really support. And that is what brought home to me how important it is that Family Center continues its work right now, so we can support all families, and we can support those families that may be struggling, to have a little more structure, to have a positive experience, to have something to look forward to on the next day, and something to help them ground themselves.
I don't know if this is like just coming from a position of privilege or arrogance, but I like to encourage people to say, listen, you know what? Your number one priority is staying healthy, like keeping healthy. Because even if you lost everything that you have, all the money you have, and you lost your house and all those things happen, if you're healthy, you can get it back, right? But if you're unhealthy, there's no way to get it back, right? If you are healthy that you can serve somebody else, you're going to get paid to serve somebody else, and you can restore any financial things that you've lost. easy for me to say because I'm in a very solid financial position. But for other people, I understand that might ring a little bit insincere or a little bit. I sincerely believe it. It's just you have to have a long enough window to kind of say, okay, yeah, I'm going to lose this, but in 5 years, how this is going to look? I'm going to be healthy and I'm still going to be able to get it back, right?
And I think that's something that I think we also need to appreciate. That is a not uncommon experience. At some point in my life, I lost a lot of value that I had built up over a long period of time. And I was couch surfing. I did not have a home over my head, a roof over my head for a while. And I stayed with a friend and they fed me, and I bought a bottle of wine every now and then. And that was how I paid for that. It is not significant loss. Is not uncommon. When you look at our small business community right now, that are really struggling to keep their doors open and to pay their bills and to pay the rent and to continue their business, they are at risk. They are stressed out, and we know that not everybody is going to make it. Right? There will be businesses that are going down, and there will be significant losses. There will be significant financial losses because of that. And I think you're right. As long as those people keep the entrepreneurial spirit, okay, that company went down. Maybe it wasn't ready to face COVID-19. But if you have that entrepreneurial spirit, you'll come up with something else and you will thrive again.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean because you're down once, you're going to be down forever.
No.
And so that is what resilience is, right? And that is why the key focus for families, for children, is to build resilience, because then we get those entrepreneurs who can go down and come back up again. And which entrepreneur who is a serious entrepreneur hasn't failed somewhere?
Exactly. And what other, in the most unprecedented time in our lifetime, and maybe ever, right, that you can have this kind of a situation, and businesses weren't created to deal with this kind of situation, right? Are there going to be failures? Of course. But as you've said, the people are the entrepreneurial things. This one died, bankruptcy, move on, new company, start over again. And they'll have to kind of reshape their business to the post-COVID reality, because it's not going to be like it was pre-COVID, right? I don't think. Many, many industries are going to change their whole delivery model. I think it's got to happen.
And that, I think, is why it's so important that young children learn executive functioning, that they learn resilience, so that down the line, a few decades later, they can be those people who thrive even in very difficult circumstances.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm with you 100%. Big fan of what you're doing, what the Family Center's doing. And you particularly, you're a fine man. I very much enjoy you, Peter. Thank
you, Alan.
Willingness to go out there and try different things and be a do-gooder like you are. You're an inspiration.
Thank you, Alan. You're too. I love the communication that you bring, and to really bring it out to the community, and to be just so much effort in pushing the things that you believe in. It's incredible. I wish I had your energy.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, how long have we been talking anyways?
I think it's been an hour.
We've been talking for an hour. Well, that went by pretty quick, didn't it?
It always does, chatting with you, Al.
Peter, you haven't been on the show before, so you wouldn't know this, but I closed this show by singing a song.
Oh, wow. Well, that's exciting. What are you singing today?
I don't know. Do you have any kind of preferences? What kind of music do you like?
Oh, what kind of music do I like? I like traditional folk songs actually quite a bit. So I don't know if you can dig deep and something that you learned when you were 10 years old.
Well, this might not be 10 years old, but I think you'll dig it. I think you'll like it. Okay, hang on.
Okay, looking forward to it. I'll mute myself so I don't mess up your song.
Oh, that's all right. I'll be fine. Some people say a man is made out of mud. A poor man's made out of muscle and blood. Muscle and blood and skin and bones. With a mind that's weak and a back that's strong. He loads 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. I was born one morning when the sun didn't shine. I picked up my shovel and I walked to the mine. I loaded 16 tons of number 9 coal. And the straw boss said, well, bless my soul, he loaded 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. I was born one morning in the drizzling rain, a fighting and trouble on my middle names. I was raised in the canebrake by an old mama line. Ain't no high-tone woman make me walk the line. I loaded 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. If you see me coming, better step aside. A lot of men didn't, and a lot of men died. One fist iron, the other is steel. If the left one don't get you, then the right one will. He loaded 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store.
Nice, good work. That sounds like an awesome blues, spiritual kind of thing. Nice, very cool.
That's kind of my style. I have to tell you this, Peter, in case you're, maybe our viewers might be interested. About, I don't know, 10 days ago or 12 days ago, I heard about this thing called Twitch for musicians. And Twitch TV is a gaming type thing where people go and watch other people play video games. So then this person, Karen Allen, wrote this book, Twitch for Musicians. And so I read about it a little bit, went to Twitch, set up an account. And so now I live stream every day a show on Twitch, which is just that, singing. But most of the time, I sing in the hot tub because there's a rumor that the International Olympic Committee is going to create a new sport, Olympic hot tub singing, and I'm in training because I want a spot on the podium.
You will get that for sure.
Anyways, it was a pleasure having you on 1000 Ways, Peter. So much fun. Thank you so much for what you do in our community. You're awesome, and I'm a big fan, man.
Thanks so much, Al, for having me and talking about the important stuff that Family Center does. Really appreciate you staging this. Thank you.
You betcha. Talk to you again, Peter.
Take care.